Hi guys, so before we get into it, a quick disclaimer that it's my intention to stay fairly spoiler free today. I'm aware that this is a new-ish movie and also the second half is fairly twist heavy and I don't want to ruin any of those moments for you. So after covering an early 80s slasher in my previous video, I've gone for a more modern one this time. The other night I watched Clown in a Cornfield. For some reason, when this was released, I got the idea in my head that it was a black comedy. I don't know why, but having now seen it, I can tell you that it is a fairly serious affair. It does have a few laughs in it here and there, but not enough to make it a horror comedy. So God knows where I got my initial information from. Although the director is a guy called Eli Craig. He's only done 3 films in total, this being his third, but his first 2 are definitely what you would call comedies. And the first of those was the fairly famous Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which I've definitely heard of, even if I've never seen. So the plot for this, you won't be surprised to learn that it's about a homicidal clown stalking the inhabitants of a small town surrounded by cornfields. We begin with a prologue set in 1999. The clown kills a couple of hapless teens, and then we fast forward to the modern day, and the killings begin again. Why? Maybe we'll find out. In the meantime, a young 17-year-old girl called Quinn moves into town with her father. They've come all the way from Philadelphia, and I've got to take a little detour at this point just to have a little moan, because it feels like I've seen so many horror films now that are set in rural areas where the main final girl or boy is an out-of-towner, and I don't really get why. Why do they always have to come in from the big city? Why can't we just have a naturally born country bumpkin who goes on to be the main character? The only reason I can think of is that if they're from a city, then I guess there's more chance that we can put ourselves into their shoes, given that there are more of us from urban areas than rural areas. But that seems like a pretty thin reason for me, even if it's true. I personally like to think that I could put myself into the shoes of any character if I try hard enough. And I refuse to believe that there aren't a whole boatload of potential Sidney Prescotts out there who just happen to come from the more backwater areas of America. So this is a trope I would like to see less of in the future going forwards, please. For all that, Quinn is a pretty damn good character regardless. This film is very aware of the subgenre's roots and is determined to let you know that it knows it. There are several references to the olden slasher days, and some of these moments are very well written. Some of them aren't. In fact, I'm going to give you a couple of examples of what I'm talking about. See if you can guess which of these I found very funny and which one I certainly didn't. So there's a scene where some characters are running through the corn. They're really scared. And one of the girls blurts out, "God, it's like we're in an 80s slasher movie." The other example is when some characters break into a farmhouse and they stumble across a phone. And at first they're really happy because this means they can now ring the police. But this is a landline phone. It's one of those where you have to put your finger into the number and spin it around, and then put your finger into the next number and spin that around. Well, I've not seen a phone like this for a long, long time. But the characters in the farmhouse, it turns out, have never seen one of these phones because they're teenagers in 2025. So I guess maybe they never would have. But the line that one of the girls blurts out is, "What the hell kind of phone is this?" And I'll tell you right now, this is the one that I found really delightful, really funny. It doesn't seem that long ago that I did my Children of the Corn review series, 11 movies, so 11 reviews. It took me a long time. If you're interested in checking those out, they're in my Stephen King playlist. But throughout that series, I never got tired of the cornfield setting, but I did get tired of the concept of children being killers. And I think I said in one of those reviews that, in my opinion, they should just make a spin-off series called Adults of the Corn, so we can have like proper slasher movies in a cornfield setting. Well, I kind of got my wish with this film. It's like somebody was a big fan of It and Children of the Corn and decided to just mesh the two ideas together. I was thinking more Halloween meets Children of the Corn, but this'll do. This film makes you think you're getting the typical array of slasher characters and then pulls the rug out from under you somehow. So Quinn, for example, the leading lady, you'll take one look at her at the start and you'll think, yeah, this is the typical plucky brunette who will be into the idea of love but doesn't want to jump into anything sexual too quickly. But actually in this film, it's the other way around. So she starts seeing this guy, but she's the one who wants to orchestrate sex. I guess she thinks it might take her pain away from the fact that she's still mourning the loss of her mother before she moved house. But, or maybe she just really likes the idea of sex. It could be that. But the guy she's with is kind of like, whoa, babe, let's slow it down a touch. So this film kind of flips the script with that stuff in that regard. And that same guy, his name's Cole, by the way, you get a few surprises with him. Like, you'll just assume from the look of him that this is the typical boyishly good-looking guy with the slicked back hair. He'll be morally incorruptible. He'll be more into smart girls than mean girls. And near the end, he'll either be the last one to die heroically or he will run off into the sunset with Quinn. You'll think all this, maybe. But no, you get a few surprises with Cole as well, which I won't spoil. And I'll throw one more character at you. Janet. So the first scene she's in, you will take one look at the expression on her face. She looks like she's been hit with a wet kipper, and you'll think, yeah, this is the bitchy, blonde, mean girl, Melissa from Friday Part 7 type character. But no, not at all. As you realise when you get into the film, yeah, she's a bit spiky at times. She's outright rude in one scene, but she's only on the spectrum of bitchiness. She's not like a fully fledged bitchy character, I would say. So this film does a good job of dangling all these recognisable stereotypes in front of your face and then just wrestles them away from you and gives you something different. But it starts and ends with Quinn, who is very well played by an actress called Katie Douglas. I did look up her age, and she was about 25, 26 when she was playing the part, but she at least appears to be 17, and she does a very good job here. I really like this group of people, meaning Quinn and her friends. They're not so goody-goody that they're boring, but they're not bad people or mean-spirited people. They're not irritating people. They're just that nice kind of middle ground of a bit naughty, sure, but cool with it. And I like the fact that a lot of this film's focus is on them rather than the villain. This film doesn't try to create yet another iconic clown character. The star of this show is not the clown in the same way that Pennywise is obviously the star of It and Art is the star of Terrifier. No, the focus is a little bit more on the characters here, and the clown is kept in the background, at least for a while. Obviously, you've got to step things up once you get into the second half of the film, and this absolutely does. But this film is firing on all cylinders for a while. The opening does well with getting you to grips with Quinn and the characters, and then things accelerate in the middle portion. Like, whoever wrote this was on fire for a while. It's some really good stuff that you get, and the twists come thick and fast. The deaths come thick and fast as well. It doesn't keep on being good all the way to the end. I think the writer drops the ball a bit in the finale. Things just get a little bit too crazy. The killer starts being a bit ineffective for no reason. It starts to feel like a bit of a dodgy Scream sequel once you get to the conclusion, and there's also an unresolved plot issue which makes me think that they wanted to do a sequel. But the thing is, though, I've done a bit of digging online, and it's been like a year since this film came out, and there's no sign that there's going to be another one. So it could be that this unresolved issue is just left there permanently, which is a bit kind of just have a proper ending, and then if there's a sequel you can come up with something, you know. But in this film's defence, this isn't an original story. It's based upon a series of 4 novels. The 4th one is due out later this year. They're also called Clown in a Cornfield. So this yarn of Quinn going up against this clown legend, it goes on for quite a few volumes. It's just a shame that we might not get all of them into film based on the performance of the first one. I can't say I'm desperate to go out and buy these books, but I do read, though. You know, I do read novels. So if you've read them, then by all means drop a quick mini review in the comments. And certainly if I hear a lot of positive things, then I might get tempted. But they are officially classed as young adult. So that makes me think, Overall, I do think that you should check this out, especially if you're into slasher films. Apart from the ending, which is a bit subpar, and opinions may differ on that, I think this is a riotously good time. I do want to give just one more bit of praise for this movie before I wrap up, though, and it concerns the title. I just love how direct it is. Clown in a Cornfield. Brilliant. It reminds me of Snakes on a Plane from all those years ago. Not a great horror film, admittedly, but it did have an absolute banger of a title that made you sit up and take notice. You can win and lose viewers depending on the strength of your title. I mean, it's on the title that you decide whether or not to watch the trailer, right? Or if you're just going through a streaming platform, if you don't like the title, your brain might not even get you to stop and think about whether you want to watch that movie. I'll give you some examples of titles that I consider to be strong and ones that I don't. And I'm just making these up. These are not real films. So, Masked Murderer at the Mall. Strong title. Tells me exactly what I need to know, what the threat is, where it's set. I even know that it's a slasher movie probably from that title. So, yeah, that would be a good one. Blood Moon. Nope. Poor title. Tells me absolutely nothing. It just sounds really generic and boring. What the hell is that about? Werewolves? No, definitely need more than that. Poor. Killer Ants at the Fairground. Good title. Tells me what the movie is about, where it's set. Very impressed. Dangerous Prey. Poor title. Tells me absolutely nothing. It just sounds really boring. It sounds like 100 other films I've seen. I'll probably just skip past that without even looking at the description. Killer Snails at the All-Girls Comprehensive School. Strong title. Tells me what's happening in the movie, where it's set. Very impressed. That is a strong one. So, yeah, you get the idea. And remember, if the Texas Chainsaw Massacre hadn't had that title, would it have been as famous as it went on to be? If it just had a title like Texas Blood, it might just be a lost horror film from like 1974 that nobody has ever seen, literally. Right, it's time to get to the bag of terror so we can find out what score I'm going to give Clown in a Cornfield. Here's the bag. So we've got 1, 2, 3.5 Michael Myers carving knives out of 5. This is a pretty solid slasher and I had a genuinely good time with it. So there we have it. I'll leave it there for today. Thank you for joining me. I'll catch you all again next time. Cheerio, bye-bye.